Hello and welcome to Off Track, the lockdown series. Unfortunately, we aren't able to go racing at the moment, but we still wanted to bring some great driver interviews. We've got a number planned over the coming weeks, so please keep an eye on the BSCDA social media pages. We're going to start off with a bit of a bang. We've got the 5 times world champion, Andrew Smith. Andrew, thank you so much for doing this interview today. How are you guys doing at the minute? Are you all well?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. All well. Bit bored at the minute. There's not much going on, like most people. And unfortunately, everybody's in the same boat, aren't they? We're just putting up with it, really. Just
yeah. Yeah, stay safe. That's the main thing. Staying safe. We've got a load of questions for you today. We're going to make the most use of the time. So, kind of starting from the very beginning, I guess you've had an incredibly successful career in BriSCA Formula 1. You've won the World Final 5 times, British 4 times, Silver 3 times. Which of those meant the most to you?
I mean, they're all very important, especially at the time when you win them, because they're all big titles at the end of the day. I mean, my first British Championship took me years to win, so the first time I won that was fantastic. My first World Final win was very, very special, albeit it was right at the start of my career, so it was very unexpected. My second world title took 12 years, believe it or not, between winning it the first year and the second time. So that was a hell of a gap. That was almost like winning it for the first time. So, I mean, but if I had to answer the question, which one meant the most, I would say my first Formula 1 World Championship, because it was at Bradford Stadium. It was at the big Bradford Bowl. The stadium was, full more or less to capacity. You had the big grandstand there. It was one of the grand old stadiums, as we like to call them. Unfortunately, that are getting few now.
Yes, yeah. I've described Bradford to my partner Lisa because she's never went, and just like you could just stand there and look right down. It was an incredible amphitheatre for stock car racing. So brilliant. So not necessarily thinking about a major championship, but what standout moment do you have in your career that kind of beats all others?
Wow. Again, there's been a lot. To pick one out is very, very difficult, but I suppose for myself, it was when I won my last World Championship at Coventry. Phil Chance, who was the chairman of the Veterans Stock Car Association at the time, organised an impromptu presentation, if you like, for want of a better word, on the start-finish. And he got myself, my dad and Dave Chisholm, EX-391, together on the start-finish, because when I won the world title that night, it meant I won it 3 times on the bounce. So I became the 3rd driver in history to win a hat-trick of world titles. And to get us 3 together on sort of a podium, if you like, of all 3 of us, I mean, especially, not long after we lost my dad, I suppose. So that is very poignant to me, that moment. I class that as the pinnacle, the sort of the crowning glory of my career, if you like, for want of a better phrase.
And I have seen that incredible photograph. There is that kind of impressive photo of the 3 of you, and it kind of it's for the archives, isn't it? I guess, you know what I mean. So it'll always be there. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right. In terms of you jumping into Formula 1, your mechanic for Peter Fordham when he was at the height of his career, did he influence your racing style at all, or was it out there that you particularly admired at that time?
I suppose he did, yeah, because I admired Peter from being a young kid, really. When my dad packed him racing, I would have been 13 years old. So after that, I tagged on with Peter, and I probably spent 3 or 4 years all told with Peter, going to Holland and racing all over. And at the time, like you say, he was doing nearly all the meetings, going for the Silver Roof against John Lund. So he did influence me, I must admit. I liked his style, I liked his all-action sort of style. But if I'm really honest, I admired John Lund just as much, because John had this ability back then to raise his game on the big occasion. I think when push came to shove, he got the better of Peter when it really mattered. And I sort of learned from that, and I thought, wouldn't it be great one day if I could raise my game on the big occasions, just like John does, And I mean, I'm not saying I'm a John Lund, but I always try to do that in big races. And the man who taught me that was John Lund, I think.
Yeah. It was an incredible time in Formula Stock Cars when those two were up there doing that meeting after meeting, and like 90 meetings or whatever it was they did, and it was a brilliant time. Do you know what I mean? And to be able to watch that, and I guess for you to be involved in it, fantastic. So when you jumped into Formula One, you came through minis, V8s. Did you consider any other form of motorsport, or was the goal always to be in Formula One?
I didn't consider anything else. No, I mean, I've had a few dabbles at other types of racing over the years. Literally just dip my toe in, but for me, stock car racing is what I was born into. It was always something I wanted to do. I went into hot stocks, what used to be called hot stocks then, the V8 class now, straight from mini stocks, because most of my mates from mini stocks went that route at that time. So we managed to put one of them together, get out on them tracks, and I think, in all honesty, after 2 or 3 years in that category, I sort of outgrew them a little bit, and it was time to move on. And Formula One was the one, yeah.
Okay. And so from the outset, you and Cecil, you built your own cars. Did you have a favourite, or was it one that you thought was the best out of all that you built?
I didn't have many cars through my career. I probably only had about 6, 7 cars all told.
Yeah.
I wasn't one for changing cars regular. I would say my favourite was the car I won my first world title in, which was actually built and designed for tarmac racing at the time, which even more so back then was probably different. The cars were different, well, same as now. The cars were very different spec. And I ended up winning the world final on shale in my tarmac car. So plus it was a very different, that car. We bought a lot of stuff from the States to spec it quite different to the rest. So that was a good car. That was my favourite car I've ever had, I think. But the best car I ever had, to answer that question, would definitely be the last shale car I had that mixed order races now. 100% the best car.
When I interviewed Lee Fairest a while ago, and we talked about kind of his favourite car, if you like, and he said your just the way it kind of went, the way mixed order drove it, you drove it, the way it went around Coventry and stuff. It was kind of, for him, that was his standout car as well. And it is a bit of an iconic car, isn't it, I suppose, in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, Lee races a car now that's very closely based on that car, to be fair, on shale. It was one Cecil built in the Davidson stable, and it wasn't exactly like mine, but it was very similar. Yeah,
So, in terms of the relationship you had with Cecil when you were building cars, was it 50-50, or kind of who put what into it? It was a great partnership, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at the time we just got on with it, but when you look back and you reflect, we was very, very good as a team, really, because I would say most of the specking of what we were doing, the laying it out, I suppose, was mainly myself. But Cecil would throw plenty of ways of getting round them ideas in his way, and a lot of the time somebody comes up with something that you didn't think of, don't they? When you've got two decent brains working together, and you can work together, which is the main thing. Neither of us are the easiest to work with, but we work well together. And it made for a winning formula for a while.
It did. So it kind of brings me on to my next question, really. So the rule book has always been pretty strict in terms of car construction. Drivers, I'm sure you did the same. We're always looking for that innovation to make them go faster. Was there one thing that you did that you actually, I was really proud that we came up with that idea, or we did that on one of my cars?
The one idea. Well, in all honesty, you talk about innovation, Jonathan, but I think there is a little bit of innovation. Everybody's car's just, it's an evolution system, really, isn't it? It's not so much. Some cars you see come out, they're massively innovative. Most of the time, they don't work. But the best cars are just really evolutions of what you've already done. Sometimes ideas from other people, a few of your own ideas. I can't honestly think of one big innovative sort of thing that I've done, but I've done lots of little things. I think the main thing is when you package them things together and they're all packaged together in one car and it works, that's your favourite, you know. And that last shale car of mine had so many little things on, just packaged together correctly, and they worked. I instantly knew they worked. Since the first time I drove the car, I said to my dad when I come off, I said, "This is special," and I could just tell, you know.
And are they kind of closely guarded secrets? Do you know what I mean? Or do you think other people kind of knew what you were doing and were trying to copy you? Because obviously it was, you know, a fantastic shell car, or you know, or was it kind of stuff that you kept to yourself, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, you keep your stuff close to your chest when you're racing at the top of the sport. You don't say too much. You'll help the odd person if they ask for help. You know, I've always tried to help people, but most of the stuff you keep to yourself. You got to, haven't you? You've got to try and have an edge, haven't you? That's what racing is all about.
Of course it is. There's quite a few drivers at the minute that are successfully competing with a dual surface car. You had one early on in your career, used it on shale and tarmac. Do you think that's something that's going to become more prevalent in the sport going forward? You know, drivers using one car for both surfaces.
Well, personally, I think it's great to see. I love to see somebody plugging away with the same car on both surfaces and having success. For quite a while, I did that, like you say, probably the early 2000s, late 90s. I only had one car because I could only afford one car at the time. You know, I bought my own house. I was doing other things like people do. And I couldn't afford to have two cars up and running, two good ones. So we managed with one. And at the time, I got frustrated because I thought the sport should have encouraged, forced, I don't know, but stop this two car sort of way things were done, because it was always going to be too much money, you know, eventually. And now we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, really, for the job to be more realistic and to get more drivers out there, it would be better if one car did the job, wouldn't it? Because you'd have half as much money to invest to race.
Do you think people have two cars? It's easier for like racing share one weekend, tarmac the next, not so much to change, or do you think the rules are coming a bit closer together so it enables less work in the workshop in the week?
I didn't quite catch all of that, but yeah, I think that there's moves trying to make the cars more similar. I mean, the cars were similar. Cars drifted apart from one another. You know, they became very specialist, and it would be difficult to be competitive with one car. If they want to make inroads to make that happen, it can be done. And like you said, some people do it to save time, but then tend to be the people that have the money to have invested in two cars. And you know, most of the people, a lot of people haven't got that sort of money. Not with the cost of stuff now. You know, everything comes from America as a fortune in the last few years, and I think it would be better if people ran with one car, but it's not happened yet, and it should have happened years ago. So I don't know if it will really.
Okay, but it is a great. I think like you say, it would be a great step forward in the sport potentially. We're kind of quite nicely into the interview. I think it's time to discuss the Smith-Wayman rivalry, which has been a cornerstone of the sport since as long as I can remember. Are you and Frankie friends now?
Well, we're not enemies anymore. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. We're racing friends, I suppose. You know, you know, we don't really see each other other than we see each other at a stock car track now and again, and we say hello. You know, but yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Frankie were on the side of the road and I wouldn't bypass him, I'd pull in and I'd help him, because that's what racing buddies do for one another. But yeah, I mean, we've had a good rivalry. You know, both families have the other drivers involved in the families as well, Stewart, Danny, etc. And my dad and old man Frank, you know, going back as far as that, I think, you know, it's important to have rivalries in a very combative sport like stock car racing. You know, it's, if you don't have rivalry, you've got no entertainment, and you know, you need the tribalism. You need the fans to get behind one. And I'm not going to say hate. Some of the fans hate some, you know, some of the stuff I've seen over the years. It makes you cringe, but most people are a bit more level-headed. It's not hatred. It's just a desire to see your man win, you know. And me and Frankie had a great rivalry. You know, I wouldn't swap it. I wouldn't swap any of it for the world looking back. I don't know about Frank, but, you know, we've had many disagreements on and off the track over various things. But We both wanted the same goal, I suppose. We both wanted to beat the other.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, isn't it?
Do you think you two kind of really benefited the sport by continuing that rivalry? Like, say, both dads started it kind of almost, and it carried on. And do you think that benefited the sport?
I'd like to think it benefited the sport for a long time, yeah. I mean, on Gears and Tears, I mean, I came out and said you're either like Smith or you like Wayman, and there's no in the middle ground. And I didn't mean that disrespectfully to any other driver. You know, it was just something I said at the time. It was very prevalent, the rivalry between Smith and Wayman's, wasn't it? And that was what the big program. I think it, on the whole, it had to be good for the sport. Had to be.
Yeah, yeah. But I think even to this day, it continues. You know what I mean? You have got Wayman fans and you've got Smith fans. It's kind of which camp are you in, and everybody's kind of got an opinion on that, haven't they? And it still kind of goes on to this day, which just kind of shows the legacy, I guess, that's kind of started and continues. We sort of talk about the rivalry. There was that incredible period in the sport when there was you, Frankie, and Rob Speak kind of at the top. You didn't seem to have the same level of rivalry with Rob Speak as you did with Frankie. Why do you think that was?
Well, for one thing, the rivalry between me and Frank has gone on for a long time, hasn't it? You know, I mean, Frankie was ever present through my whole career, which lasted probably 18 years. And he's had another career since I packed up, and he had a career before I started. So basically, you know, it's the longevity of it, I think. I mean, Robert was only in stock cars in my time, probably 3 years. 3 years, I'm guessing. And we had a couple of run-ins, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just a longevity thing. I mean, when Rob came into stock cars, from a stock car fan's point of view, it was like a breath of fresh air, really. He was like, he wanted to be top dog and nothing was going to stand in his way. And he had all, shall we say, everything at his disposal to do that. You know, he ticked all the boxes with everything. The infrastructure around him was fantastic. He was good. But I mean, I did have a rivalry with Rob. It just didn't last that long, really, because he weren't in the sport that long. I mean, I remember one instance where there was one Hennisford meeting once. I passed him in the final and he splattered me in the fence and himself as well. And I lost my head over that one. And the next day at Buxton, I sent him into orbit, you know, and we sort of died down a bit. I think him and Frankie really, at the time, Frankie was the top dog. I was knocking on his door. Frankie was the top of the sport, and Rob wanted to knock him off his perch. So I think that's why it was more about them two, really.
Yeah. Okay. It was, like I say, it was a brilliant time. You mentioned Gears and Tears. When was the last time you guys sat down and watched that program as a family?
Oh gosh, it's funny. I mean, when it came out, we probably watched it once all the way through since it came out. But now and again, we'll watch the odd episode. One of the kids will spot something device and, you know, a clip, and then we'll sit down and we'll watch it. And we don't really. I can't remember the last time we sat down with the purpose of watching it. You know, but I've seen it all. I can remember most of it.
Did you enjoy being part of it?
At the time, yeah, it was interesting. You know, it was a BBC production. It wasn't any other separate company, so it was proper how they did it. You know, they knew what they were doing. It was quite a bit of it was edited for the purpose of the rivalry, and not necessarily between me and Frank. So it was genuine. You know, I mean, the rivalry and the competitiveness between the whole teams was. Between the Waymans and the Smiths at the time was genuine. You know, they didn't have to fabricate anything. They just edited it cleverly to make it look probably a little bit more spicy than it was, to be fair. But I didn't mind because it was to benefit the sport as a whole. The way I saw it, we wasn't getting anything personally out of it. You know, it was a hindrance to us. It was hard work. A lot of it, fitting in with their schedules, going over things again and again. You know, until they got exactly what they want. But if it benefited the sport, then it was a task worth doing. I mean, really, the sport should have grabbed hold of that with both hands and fed off it in some way, but they never did anything. They just let it fizzle out, really.
Yeah, because it was the world final that followed, wasn't it? It was at Coventry. It was it was just incredible attendance. I remember just you couldn't move with the
Yeah,
amount of people that came to watch the world final on the back of that.
that's
And
right.
when I
Yeah.
And then when I talk about stock cars to people who've got no idea what it is, they'll say, "Oh, we saw Gears and Tears and that Wayman and Smith family and stuff." So it did have a far-reaching impact on a load of people that were out there didn't know anything about stock cars.
Yeah, I suppose it did. It brought quite a lot of old fans back as well that probably lost touch with the sport, with the loss of Bellevue, Manchester, and Bradford, and them sort of places where you've got big groups of people. The cities back in the 70s and the early 80s, and them people probably, maybe went to a few meetings just on the strength of that, just to catch up with the sport again. And some of them actually fell back in love with the sport and still go to this day. So it did have a positive effect, but nowhere near the effect it should have had. I mean, you've got a program going out there that peaked with 7 million viewers, and BriSCA couldn't pull a slight fraction from that and keep them interested. I mean, I just didn't get it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a missed opportunity, absolutely. Just kind of sort of finally looking back at your time as a stock car driver, how do you think you were perceived by fans and your fellow drivers? What do you think their perception of you was? How do you think you were seen?
Well, that's hard to say, isn't it? Really, it's for me to say. It's very difficult. The fans, I had a lot of fans. I had a lot of Smith fans who I'd inherited from me. My own fans I'd generated over for myself, and I had a lot of people who didn't like me, which I didn't mind that because, like we come back to it, it's very much of a tribal sort of sport, isn't it? You love and hate sort of relationships happen. So I think I made an impression on the fellow drivers. I used to take a lot of pride from the fact that when I did race, when you had a championship and they'd used to interview with the other driver, ask them who their favourite was, who they thought would win. And I used to come out on top quite a lot on that one. I was obviously respected enough for people to know that I was a proper contender all the time, because more often than not, they picked me to win it more than anybody else. I used to get quite a bit of pride from that, personally.
Yeah. So, aside from supporting your daughters in their respective stock car careers, do you have time for any other hobbies?
Any other hobbies outside of stock cars? Well, not really. No, I'm pretty boring in that respect. With the mini stocks, what I do with Rebecca, my youngest one, it's pretty. Once the season's on, anyway, it's all consuming. Them minis are just a nightmare to work on. They take so much maintenance and. We're only a little skeleton team. There's only me and my daughter. We don't have any mechanics, any helper out. I tend to spend every spare moment I get doing that. Other than that, just relax and watch a bit of TV with the family and my wife. And, we're not big socialisers. We don't go out drinking very much.
Absolutely, you can't now anyway, so it's good practice, isn't it? For like lockdown.
Oh, yeah.
So, you mentioned TV programs. What's your favourite TV program?
Favourite TV programmes? I like some of the crime dramas. I watch them. There's quite a lot about on TV, and there's always, and me and Lisa, we both enjoy them. Silent Witness, love that. Like some of the cooking programs, like MasterChef, I always watch that. Yeah, that's about it really. I don't watch soaps. I can't be bothered with soaps. To me, they just the amount of hours you waste during the week if you're a soap addict. It's just not worth it. I don't go there with them.
So you mentioned cooking. Are you a bit of a cook then? Do you have a signature dish?
I'm not much of a cook at all. I reckon I could do it. I mean, like I say, we watch MasterChef, and I'm that good now. I can always spot what they've done wrong, and I said to Lisa, spinning too long, that's too dry, and I'm a bit of an expert in that respect. I reckon I could move over to the practical side and make it work if I had to. But my wife's a fantastic cook anyway, so we eat well anyway, so there's no real need for me to get in the kitchen. But I reckon if I had to, I could do it.
Do you reckon? So if Lisa said to you about one night, Andrew, kitchen's all yours, what dish are you coming up with?
I'd probably do some nice spicy meatballs or something, and with tagliatelle like that. Something that's not too difficult. I reckon I could do a roast dinner if I had.
Good. Best holiday destination you've been to?
Oh gosh, I went to South Africa very briefly on a racing. I only went for 5 days, and I said I'd love to go back there. Something about it, I just loved it. Never had a chance to get back there since. But one day will do. But I like America as well. I've been to various places in the States, usually watching racing. So probably the States, or maybe South Africa.
Okay, cool. At least I won't obviously see this. So, do you have a celebrity crush?
A celebrity crush? Wow. I'm a bit too old for a celebrity crush, really, aren't I?
No.
I
No,
mean,
not so.
if I was a young man now, I would be spoilt for choice. I mean, I sometimes see the TV and there's scantily clad young birds walking around everywhere, isn't there? But, I don't. Back in the day, I used to have a bit of a thing for Julia Roberts. I'm not into rom-coms, but if she's in one, I'll watch it. I like her.
Yeah.
She's a nice lady.
Good. Keeping it topical, if you had to choose 3 current or former Formula One drivers to self-isolate with, who would they be and why?
That's a good question for these times, isn't it? I suppose. I mean, well, I'm really interested in the history of stock car racing. I love the stories of the past, and so it'd probably be somebody from that era. Maybe would be one of them. Maybe like somebody who's been around a long time. Maybe someone like Willie Harrison, the elder stock car racing. He could tell me loads of stories about me dad racing and the tracks they used to go to. That'd be really good. Probably. I'm going to say we need someone to cook for us, but I don't think I've ever seen a stock car driver that's a good cook, so I can't really go for that. Probably someone like Derek Ferris to be good, because he's always chirpy, he's always happy, and again, he's got a deep history in the sport. He knows loads about it. He's been going donkey's years, so he'd be good to have around. And out the present crop, probably Heinze. I mean, I raced against Heinze. He's a bit of a veteran now. He's quite an educated fellow, is Paul, so there'd be plenty of other things to talk about other than stock cars as well if Heinze was in.
Good. Yeah, I like that. So it's well thought out. There's lots of conversation going on. Not any time to watch MasterChef, but that's okay. Going back to your racing for a second, did you prefer racing shale or tarmac?
I mean, a lot of people think 100% shale, because I think form-wise, over my career, I was better on shale. I used to enjoy both, if I'm honest with you. If you're fast and you're on pace, tarmac's fantastic, but if you're off the pace, it's rubbish. Whereas shale, if you're quick, it's great, but if you're not just the fastest man, you can enjoy it. So I think shale is the simple answer to that, but massively stand out. I do like tarmac.
And was there one particular track that you really enjoyed going to, and it was on the calendar, it was like, I need to do every meeting there because it was your favourite track, or just enjoyed racing round?
It's got to be Coventry, really, hasn't it? Gone now, hasn't she? It's a disaster, really. But I mean, Coventry was an event. It was once a month. It was, you could set your calendar by it. You religiously went to Coventry 8 times a year. I felt like the good drivers raised the game. Coventry, the very best. You put better tyres on for the final at Coventry. You try that a bit harder. It was just a cut above the other tracks.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
in my eyes.
Yeah, I think almost every Coventry final was like it was like a championship event. You'd almost got all your best drivers in that one race, hadn't you? At every kind of Coventry meeting, and it did make it stand out. Absolutely. You've mentioned Rob. You've mentioned Frankie. Those two aside, who was the hardest driver that you raced against in your career?
Those two aside.
Yeah.
Wow. When I first started, I used to always have to have one eye on Kev Smith 64. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Kev was good. I mean, he never had the best equipment, but old school stock car driver, i.e., didn't care. He was the man of the moment at the time when I started. I could see a lot of the other drivers were I'm going to say frightened of him because I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
A lot of the other drivers, you look at how other drivers react and how they behave. A lot of them are scared of Kev, and I was never scared of Kev, but I just had to be crafty with Kev because if he could get a bumper back on you after you got by him, he'd fence you without thinking twice.
Yeah.
Kev was a very hard driver, so I would say Kev Smith's probably the hardest stock car driver other than the ones you mentioned.
Yeah. So if you saw him behind you in your mirrors, did it make you think twice then? Like, I need to be holding on a little bit here.
100%. You know, if that's what determines a hard, that you have to watch your mirrors and you have to treat them with more respect or more craftiness when you do come up against them, then Kev Smith ticked the boxes on that one for sure.
Brilliant. We've kind of talked about this a little bit already. When you were racing Formula One, you were on the BSCDA committee. Was there anything you wanted to change to better the sport that you weren't able to do at the time, or was it the thing about bringing one car in, or was there anything else you kind of thought actually we could do something here to make this better?
I mean, over the years, there were lots of. I mean, the BSCDA as an organisation is a fantastic organisation, and the committee over the years, on the whole, has been an asset. It's looked after the drivers' interests. You know, the drivers would have been railroaded along if it wasn't for the BSCDA, its strength. And I was on there quite a long time, and there was lots of things we tried to do. You know, and usually you come up against a brick wall. I mean, the one thing that sticks out, what really disappointed me was way back when John Haynes took Northampton on in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, he invested plenty of money at Northampton. He was keen for the sport. He obviously had a lot behind him, and he was a clever man. And he wanted to take the sport onto TV. And he wanted some sort of control to be able to do that. And he wanted authorization, if you like, from the BSCDA and BriSCA. Go ahead and put these things in place. And I was really keen for him to do that because at the time we got no TV. So to my mind, to sign the TV rights over to a man like that would have been a no-brainer because there was nothing to sign over. We had no TV. You know, he was going to do it. Nobody else was looking like doing. He just got fed up because he couldn't get any. They would give him the carte blanche to get on with it. You know, and I was disappointed about that. I thought I was very, very short-sighted. Some of the BSCDA and definitely the other promoters there.
Yeah, it does sound like a bit of a shame, to be fair. I mean, I didn't know that story, so it does sound like a shame we didn't sort of grasp that while it was available. Are you still as passionate about Formula One today? Obviously not at every single meeting. Do you look at social media to see how people have gone, who's won, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, up until I was quite well involved with my brother, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
in the last 4 or 5 years, I got quite heavily involved with Stewart's racing and got back into it quite a lot, you know, and I'm not as passionate as I was, if I'm honest. I just think, I don't know, we've all got rose-tinted spectacles when we get a bit older, I suppose. It's still a cracking sport on its night, but to me, them nights are getting fewer and far between. He's not there often enough. And I look at the drivers and the level of drivers, and they're out there, but they're not all racing all the time, and this is a problem. You've got quality drivers who are, for some reason, they've all got their own reason. No one's pulling them together and encouraging them to be out there all the time. When you've got Finnegan, Johnson, Harris, Wayne, you know, Nigel Green, when they're all out there together, all at once, Lee Ferris, you know, there's more. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah.
When they're all there, Sauder, when they're all there in a one race, in one big fight, it's as good as it's ever been. But they all miss meetings too much, and they've all got the reasons, but from the actual spectacle, it just doesn't leave you with as much interest to go and watch as much, I don't think.
Yeah. Because it does, I think that's what brings spectators back, isn't it? They want to kind of see almost, when you've got rivalries or you've got hard drivers racing week in, week out, they want to go to the next meeting to see what happens, to see if the so-and-so is going to put so-and-so in the fence. And that's what draws people into it, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, I know it still has its contact and it still has its feuds. You know, it's there all the time. But I don't know. I don't know. It just seems to be missing a little bit. I mean, I do follow it on social media, and I think the big job in a few years, these sort of things, and a lot of the online stuff they're doing. You know, they're putting the promoters to shame in my eyes in a lot of ways. There we go.
You mentioned you were helping Stewart out sort of for a few years. Did you have a great working relationship in terms of your advice and Stewart's advice coming together to make it a winning package, or were you on a bit of the periphery with it all?
I mean, ultimately, Stewart built the cars and Stewart drove the cars. To say anything that took anything away from what he did, you know, he didn't need my input really to do what he did. But what he could do, he could bounce things off, and I could suggest things to him. I like to think in his last 3 or 4 years we worked really well together. Don't forget, for a long time, we worked together, we raced together, we were sort of in each other's faces too much, if you like, and we was rivals on the track, and it was difficult at times, you know, back then. But since then, obviously, I'm well retired out of it. We live a long way apart. We don't work together. So when we used to go racing, we had a good rapport, to be honest, the last few years. And you know, I like to think that when we put our heads together, it made a difference. You know,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
you know, because he's a fantastic driver. I mean, it's such a shame he's finished early because it took him a while to get himself. I think he was the number one driver at the end. You know, he got himself to be the best in my eyes. He could have then pushed on and tried to keep being the best for a few years, if you know what I mean. And you know, I mean, some cracking lads out there. Don't get me. Who feels Stewart had got to that point where he could press home? He was the number one, and it just didn't work out, did it? You know, turn of fate.
Yeah, no, it stopped a bit too quickly, didn't it? I guess in that respect. You mentioned sort of the beginning when you worked together, raced together, and that was portrayed on Gears and Tears, wasn't it? There was a bit of a rivalry almost in the garage with you and Stewart. What was that accurate? You've kind of alluded to it there.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, you know, if I'm honest, you know, I wouldn't show him a card, same as he wouldn't. You know, when you've got Frankie, he was my biggest rival in them. You know, in that Gears and Tears sort of era, that year there, and the year, you know, them couple of years, and yeah, I mean, wrong. We never fell out. We had a few frosty moments, but we never fell out. You know, we had to work together, and we were brothers at the. And if he was stuck, I'd help him, and if I was stuck, he'd help me when push come to shove. But we had our own racing careers, and we were very, very, very separate.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking like modern day and cars that are currently racing now, is there one out there that you think, I wish I'd built that? I really like that car.
I won't say there's any that I wish I built. I know where you're coming from. Is the one I sort of admire. Don't know really. Not really. I suppose the bet. I don't know. Nigel did well with that old car of mine. Car that was the next car of mine, you know, but he completely rejigged it about and changed the whole outlook on the fundamental way the car was, and made it successful again in a different way. So I admired that. You know, I admired that. Obviously he lost a bit of heart over certain things that happened, and which was a shame because you know it took his focus off the sport a little bit, and that alludes to what I said before. He's missed meetings, was keen, and you know Nigel Green, that's like he was a few years ago, on loving his racing. It would have been basically good competition for you know Tom.
Yes.
So probably Nigel Green's time at camp.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Last year at Skegness, you jumped back into an F1 to do the time trials. What was that like? Was it how you remembered it, or was it totally different?
Yeah, it was no different really. I mean, I don't think there's a few subtle changes, but I don't think they've changed in the however many years since I raced, 9 years, whatever it is. Yeah, the main difference was they're on different tyres now, so it was a little bit different to drive on them tyres. But fundamentally, it was like riding a bike. You know, I had a couple of laps. After a couple of laps, it just felt like second nature. I wasn't comfy. The steering wheel was too far away. Stewart's quite a big lad, if you've noticed, and couldn't reach the steering properly. But it was a bit of fun, and it kept, it did Robert a bit of favour. Good friend of mine, and he wanted me to do it. And Stewart wanted me to be the one that stepped in for him. So yeah, it was worth doing.
Good. What one piece of advice would you give to someone who's coming into the sport that wants to be the next Andy Smith? That's a big question.
One bit of advice, crikey. Dunno. I think you need a lot of things to be good at stock car racing. I think out of all types of motorsport, I think you need more. You need to tick more different boxes to be a very good stock car driver than most things, because of what the nature of the sport itself. You've got to be a decent fabricator as well as a good driver, and you've got to be tough and resilient. And I think the best advice is probably just determination. You've got to be determined. You've got to want it. If you'll get it. And you've just got to not give in. Because stock cars can kick you in the nuts so many times. Damage, engine damage. If you're trying to fund it yourself, you can get in a low point very easily. And think it's all crumbling away. But you've got to be determined, and the good times will come. You really. Yeah, that's why I just stick at it, and you believe in yourself, stick at it.
Did you have some really tough times throughout your career? Did you were there times when you thought, actually, I'm done with this. It's costing too much, or it's costing too much of time.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had some low points in my lowest. Really was probably a couple of times I was, winning world finals and mechanical fail robbing me, if you like. They get to you when you really want to be world. For me, the gold roof was what it was all about. Other people think differently, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But don't forget, I grew up as the son of at the time, the most successful world champion that ever been. Obviously, John's gone on to be more successful, but when I was like growing up, my dad, you can imagine being the son of Stuart Smith was quite a weird place to be sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
It just made me want to be world champion. When I missed out through just sheer horrid luck, with mechanical issues, that gets you. Yeah, and I think one of my other big disappointments, what springs to mind, was probably the first year that the Silver Route was run as a national series, which would have early 2000s, and I actually went down. It was a shootout then. It was done over 30 nationally over the year. So it was a restricted number of fixtures, but it was still a lot of racing. Anyway, it went to the last round, and it was me and Frankie was on points. And going into the meeting, he had the lead, but I had a chance. And I didn't drive well all night. I went out in my heat, and one of Frank took a pot shot at me and took me out, and I let it get to me. I should have just kept my head and put it to one side, and I didn't. I lost my head, to be honest, and I drove back the rest of the night. And I was really low after that meeting because I felt I let myself down, and I let everybody down. I didn't drive well.
Yeah.
And I was getting a bit down about the sport at the time. I was getting a bit wore out. I was exhausted, and I had a year off after. I took a year out of racing. I just thought, I've got to clear my head and get this. And I came back after 12 months, learned from my mistakes. You've got to learn from your mistakes, haven't you? And came back a better driver, I think, after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As we were talking, you mentioned your dad, you mentioned John Lund. There's that raging debate around who is the greatest stock car driver of all time. Do you think you can answer that question, or is that an unfair one to ask you?
We can all have an opinion, can't we? We've all got an opinion. I mean, I can answer it. I don't mind answering it.
Yeah.
close, isn't it?
It's very close. It's very close.
It's really close. You see, if you ask somebody who's probably 15, 20 years older than me, they'd probably say Stewart Smith, wouldn't they? Because they remember the glory days of stock car. I mean, the best days of stock cars were probably between early 70s and early 80s, that era, to be honest. And my dad was the man in that era. But then you look at John Lund's number of world titles.
Yeah.
But then you look at young Frank's number of titles and longevity and time at the top. I honestly,
it's really
it's
hard.
really tough. It's really, and I'm not copping out in any way. Answer it easy, but I'd probably say young Frank needs a couple of more world title classed as the best stock car driver ever, doesn't he? I think.
Okay.
I just think on the biggest stage of all, he's not delivered enough, if I'm honest. John Lund has. That's the difference.
Yeah. So you're going John Lund?
I'm going to go John Lund.
I like that answer. Good answer.
Because, like I say, I'm all about world finals, so yeah, mark on that.
I'm sure that your answer will generate some debate, which is quite good. We like that. So just a couple more questions. There were some personal reasons, and I'm sure many reasons for you choosing to retire when you did. 2011, I think it was. Looking back, do you still think it was the right time for you to finish in the sport?
Yes, I do. I knew in my own mind at the time I'd had enough. Don't get me wrong, I was at the very top of the sport.
Yeah.
Again, I was conscious of my father when he finished racing. He finished at the very top of the sport as well. Certain other things went on which made it time for me to pack in. But the main reason I stopped, and I tell everybody this when they ask, is I just fell out of love with driving stock cars anymore. I just didn't want to do it. I'd had enough. And at the time, Jessica, my eldest girl, had just shown that she wanted to do mini stock racing. She just left. We got her a mini, and I always remember when I was a kid, I did mini stocks, but I was just a bit part player because the focus was on my dad's Formula One racing, quite rightly, which was fair enough. But I always remember as a kid, as a 12, 13-year-old kid, I used to turn up at mini stock meetings. I only raced when they were supporting Formula One. And we used to get there late, weren't prepared. And I used to look at the other drivers, and their dads were there solely, their focus was on them kids, and they was better prepared than I was. And I always suffered with confidence from a racing point of view at a young age. Because I was prepared enough, or we was doing it right. I always said to myself, if the kids want to race, they'll get me full attention. That's not to saying that my dad did it wrong. He did. I wanted to do it a different way. So that was a big reason.
Okay. And it's a massive decision though for you to have made, just me, and especially when you consider, who you were in the sport at the time. Did you get lots of support, or was it kind of a lot of people trying to dissuade you the other way to kind of stay racing?
I think everybody wanted me to carry on. They were all some people couldn't understand it, but then they weren't me. You've got to make a decision for yourself. What's right for you at the end of the day. And for the reasons I've stated, it was the right thing for me to do. I remember sitting down with Lee. I just don't want to race anymore. She says, well, if you don't want to race, don't race. Simple as that. And I thought, well, it is as simple as that, really, isn't it? I did feel that I had a following and sponsors, fans, and all the rest of it. But ultimately, you've got to think of your own life, haven't you? And what's right for you.
Yeah.
We're not professionals. We should be for what we do. Well, what I did, what these boys do now. But we're not. At the end of the day, it's a hobby.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great answer. Thank you. And finally, so after this interview, you and I become best friends. I win the lottery, and I say to you, Andy, I want to fund the full season for you in 2021. 2 cars, fund everything. Would you do it?
Well, when you get your millions, come back and ask me that.
See, that was easy.
I mean, the kids are finished now. I've put both kids stops. They've loved it. I like to think I've done everything I can for them. We couldn't do any more.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, I'd have a go. But it's not going to happen because I wouldn't come into it just to have a run round.
Yeah.
I want to come into it to try and do. I'm not saying I would do any good. I'd want, if I were going to do it, I'd want to do it properly, I suppose. And which, don't get me wrong, I'm not desperate to do it at all. But I wouldn't rule it out.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy. It's been so good to talk to you today. Your answers have been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. And stay safe. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Jonathan, and everybody out there. Look after yourselves. Look after your family. I know you're all. It's for a good reason, and everybody stay safe, like you said. Best wishes to everybody. Thank you.
Cheers, Andrew. Thanks. Bye.